Once upon a time, at the very edge of a whispering forest, where the oak trees stood tall and the fireflies blinked like tiny stars fallen to the earth, there was a village unlike any other. It was called Spore Hollow, and every single house in it was made from an enormous, rounded mushroom. Some were red with white polka dots. Some were golden as afternoon honey. Some were lavender and smelled faintly of rain. And right in the very center of Spore Hollow, in the coziest, roundest, most perfectly plump mushroom of all, lived two brothers named Max and Jax. Max and Jax were twins, 8 years old, with matching tufts of brown hair that never quite lay flat, and matching gap-toothed smiles that always made people feel like something wonderful was about to happen. Max loved to climb things. Jax loved to name things. Together, they made the very best kind of team, the sort of team that could find an adventure hiding inside an ordinary Tuesday. On this particular evening, the sky above Spore Hollow had turned the color of peach jam, and the lanterns hanging between the mushroom caps were just beginning to glow. Their grandmother, who everyone called Nana Pip, had told them supper was almost ready. But Max was peering out the round little window of their mushroom home, and he tugged Jax by the sleeve. "Look," Max whispered, pointing into the forest just beyond the village edge. "Something's glowing in the trees." Jax pressed his nose to the glass. Sure enough, tiny, sparkling lights were drifting through the forest like slow-falling snow, only they caught every color of the rainbow. Pink and gold and silver and blue, floating lazily between the mossy trunks. "Whatever it is," Jax said, his eyes going wide, "I think we should name it." Nana Pip called from the kitchen that supper could wait exactly 5 minutes, and that was all Max and Jax needed. They pulled on their boots, pushed open the round wooden door, and crept toward the glittering glow. The forest floor was soft and carpeted in deep green moss that felt like velvet beneath their boots. The trees here were ancient and kindly, with great gnarled roots that arched up like doorways, and the last light of evening filtered through the leaves in long golden shafts. Max and Jax walked slowly, following the trail of sparkling lights that drifted just ahead of them, always just a little further, always just around the next mossy root. Then they heard it, a sound like the world's gentlest thunderclap, soft and round and almost musical. Achoo! A cascade of glitter exploded through the trees, every color imaginable, raining down in a slow shimmer that coated the moss and the roots and Max's hair and Jax's shoulders. The boys froze. Then, very slowly, they stepped around a wide oak tree, and there, curled up in a little hollow between 3 ancient roots, was the most extraordinary creature they had ever seen. It was a dragon, but not the sort of dragon that lived in scary stories. This dragon was small, only a little larger than a very big dog, with scales the soft color of sea glass, somewhere between green and blue and gray. Its wings were folded neatly against its back like a sleeping butterfly, and its eyes, when it opened them, were the warm amber color of honey held up to the light. It looked at Max and Jax. It blinked, and then, with a tiny, apologetic expression, it sneezed again. Achoo! Another shower of glitter rained down, gold and violet this time, and Jax clapped his hands with delight. "I'm going to name you Shimmer," he announced. The dragon made a sound somewhere between a purr and a rumble, and seemed to agree completely. Max held out his hand very slowly, the way Nana Pip had taught him with the rabbits that sometimes came to the garden. The dragon stretched its neck forward, sniffed his fingers, with a tiny snout no bigger than a tangerine, and then pressed its warm, smooth head against Max's palm. Its scales were warm as sun-baked stones and perfectly smooth, and Max felt something he could only describe as happiness bubbling up from his toes. "Hello, Shimmer," Max said softly. Shimmer rumbled happily and sneezed again, this time producing a gentle cloud of rose gold glitter that settled over all three of them like a blessing. Jax looked around at the glittering forest, at the rainbow sparkle clinging to every leaf and root, and he thought it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "Do you live out here all alone?" he asked the dragon. Shimmer looked at them with those warm amber eyes, and somehow they both understood. The dragon wasn't lonely, not exactly. It simply wandered, following its curiosity from one glittering corner of the forest to another. It slept where the moss was softest. It drank from the little streams that sang between the stones. It sneezed glitter over the flowers and watched them sparkle in the morning light. And that was a very fine life. "That sounds like a proper adventure," Max said admiringly. Jax nodded slowly. "An adventure that never ends." Shimmer sneezed enthusiastically, as if agreeing, and the boys laughed as silver glitter settled in their hair. But the sky beyond the forest was growing deeper now, shading from peach to plum to the first soft blue of night. The fireflies were waking up properly, blinking their gentle lights among the trees, and somewhere back in the village, a bell was ringing. That was Nana Pip's supper bell, and both boys knew it well. "We have to go back," Jax said reluctantly. Shimmer tilted its head, then did something unexpected. It stood up on its 4 small legs, shook its wings gently, and began to walk. Not away into the forest, but toward Spore Hollow, back the way the boys had come. "Are you coming with us?" Max whispered. Shimmer sneezed a little puff of peach-colored glitter and kept walking. Nana Pip was standing in the doorway of their round mushroom home when the boys came back, and she took one look at the glitter coating them head to toe and the small sea glass dragon padding softly at their heels, and she simply smiled. Nana Pip had lived in Spore Hollow for a very long time. She was not easily surprised. "Well then," she said, "I suppose there'll be 4 of us for supper." They ate warm soup made of forest mushrooms and herbs, and crusty bread with golden butter, and Shimmer sat very politely near the hearth and only sneezed twice, filling the kitchen with clouds of lavender glitter that made everything shimmer like a dream. After supper, Nana Pip brought out the most special thing in all of Mushroom Hollow, a blanket that had been in the family longer than anyone could remember. It was a patchwork blanket, soft as cloud fluff, made of squares in every gentle color, sage green and dusty rose and sky blue and warm cream. And this blanket, Nana Pip had always told them, was no ordinary blanket. It was a story blanket. Whenever it was spread across a child at bedtime, it would begin to whisper in the very quietest of voices a bedtime story made just for them. Nana Pip spread the story blanket across Max and Jax as they lay curled together in their wide, mushroom-capped bed, and Shimmer settled at the foot, warm and solid and perfectly content. The dragon's scales glowed very faintly in the dark, a soft blue-green light like the bottom of a still pond, just enough to make the room feel safe and magical. And then the blanket began to whisper. The boys couldn't quite make out every word, the way you can never quite catch every note of music drifting from another room, but they heard enough. They heard something about a river made of moonlight. They heard something about a mountain that sang. They heard something about 2 brothers with matching gap-toothed smiles who traveled to the very edge of the world and found it was only the beginning of a much larger world beyond. Max's eyes grew heavy. He thought about Shimmer wandering through the glittering forest, following curiosity like a compass. He thought about adventures, waiting patiently around every mossy tree, behind every golden hill, just beyond the next soft horizon. He smiled without quite knowing it. Jax was already half in a dream, but a small, happy part of his mind was naming all the places he wanted to visit. The mountain that sang, the river of moonlight, the forest beyond the forest. He would write them all down tomorrow, he decided. Tomorrow they would begin. Shimmer sneezed one last time at the foot of the bed, releasing the softest, most gentle little cloud of silver and gold, and it drifted up through the warm mushroom room like the last thought before sleep, settling over both boys like a second blanket made entirely of wishes. The story blanket whispered on. The fireflies blinked outside the round little window. The lanterns of Spore Hollow glowed low and warm between the mushroom caps, and Max yawned a great, long, satisfied yawn that seemed to come all the way from the tips of his toes. Jax followed with one of his own. Their eyes fluttered once, twice, and then slowly, gently, completely, they closed. And the twins of Mushroom Hollow drifted off to sleep, dreaming of glitter-filled skies and adventures waiting just beyond the trees, patient as morning, bright as a dragon's sneeze, ready and wonderful and theirs.